all-knowing and all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 45. Hey, baby, you guys seem to have a good chat. Someone stopped Lana behind her. This is Clark. Kent was slightly stunned when he heard the familiar behind him. Before he could turn his head, he felt his shoulder hit hard, and a figure walked by. The man walked all the way to Lana's side and took the other's hand as if he were claiming sovereignty. You know, it's inevitable to feel joy to see old friends. Lana looked at each other sweetly, and as soon as she finished speaking, she raised her head and gently caught each other's kiss. Whitney. Clark. Kent looked at the scene in front of him, the corners of his mouth immediately collapsed, and his expression began to be a little ugly. He recognized Lana's side as none other than his high school classmate Whitney, and the two had a bad relationship in high school, even a little badly. Now, however, he actually got along with his childhood sweetheart. Clark, you kid still looks unlikable. Gone. Whitney raised her head and spoke to Clark with a dark face. Kent said hello, then pulled Lana up and turned to leave. I'll go first, and we'll talk later when I have time. Lana followed Whitney and looked back apologetically, and she realized that her boyfriend was actually with Clark. Kent knew each other, and it seemed that the relationship between the two sides was not good. Clark. Kent forced a smile, then stood there and watched Lana and the two gradually walk away. Clark, you're no worse than that Whitney. Chen Tian next to him said in a deep voice. I'm a freak, growing up, and a lot of the time I don't have the power to choose. Clark. Kent shook his head, his eyes were slightly bitter, and he glanced deeply at Chen Tian and didn't say much. Now that he has changed to a new environment, he only thinks about trying not to expose his difference, otherwise this new friend in front of him will avoid him like everyone else. And clear Clark. Chen Tian, who thought Kent, couldn't help but complain in his heart. According to Da Chao's ability, in fact, the definition of a freak is not his own decision, he can only blame Da Chao for being too kind, if he is replaced by some beautiful manga guy. Whitney who offends him may die the next day. Thinking about it, Chen Tian wondered if he wanted to enlighten the other party. But want Clark. It is obviously difficult for an honest person like Kent to give birth to evil thoughts. Many periods of great chaos always give people an innate sense of justice. Clark of this universe in front of him. Kent, too, exudes an unusual sense of righteousness. How do you get him to start changing in advance? Phew. Just as Chen Tian was deep in thought, he suddenly heard a sound of breaking the air from the side, and subconsciously stretched out his hand. In the blink of an eye, a rugby ball was being caught in his hand. Chen, your reaction power is really fast. Clark next to it. Kent was stunned, withdrew the hand that was just about to be stretched out, and sighed with some surprise. The Oriental in front of him has only been in contact for half a day, and the latter has already done a lot of things that surprised him. Hey, you're two freshmen? At this time, on the rugby field not far away, a figure trotted over. The other party was a middle-aged man in a coaching uniform with an apologetic face. Sorry, the training just now was too intense. It's okay. Chen Tian smiled and did not blame the other party too much, and casually threw the rugby back. Thank God. Fortunately there were no serious consequences. The middle-aged man took the ball, immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and then looked Chen Tian up and down again. You just reacted quickly, even a little too fast, and would be a good player on the rugby field. My name is John. I'm the coach of the varsity rugby team. I wonder if you're interested in trying the sport of rugby. Coach John indicated his identity, and showed a strong interest in Chen Tian's eyes. This is a sport full of passion and blood. I believe that as long as it is a man, try it. You will definitely like it. Quote. Then, he turned his gaze to Clark, who was on the side. Kent, you're big, even better suited to the rugby pitch than your friends, and I'd love you to try it too. Quote. In fact, after seeing that Chen Tian was okay just now, Coach John, who was relieved, set his sights on Clark. Kent on. At the end of the day, rugby is a sport that requires intense physical confrontation. Without knowing Chen Tian's ability, just looking at the figure still looks a little thin. Zero after all, rugby is a sport that values physical fitness. Coach John invited him loudly, but out of politeness just made a mistake. The former was more interested in Clark. Kent on. And Chen Tian listened to Coach John's words, just smiled and didn't say much. Even if he doesn't talk about spiritual ability, with his experience in dealing with people in 2 lifetimes, he can see the calculation in the other party's heart. As for Clark, Kent hesitated after hearing the other party's invitation. After all, his ability is too strong. Compared with ordinary people, he is not in the same dimension at all, and going to the arena is simply bullying. No problem. Right here in Clark. When Kent was about to say no, Chen Tian next to him agreed. Of course he didn't decide for Clark, but he was sure that Clark would agree. Really? Clark on the side saw him go. His expression was a little hesitant, and he slowly said, okay, we will go together tomorrow. I hope to see you on the field tomorrow. Coach John said with a smile. To receive a player as physically talented as Clark is definitely a good thing for his team. The team assembles at 8 a.m. Remember to come over tomorrow. He was afraid of Clark. Kent repented and immediately said a lot in one breath. Okay, big boy Clark. Kent is really not good at socializing and has to nod his head in the face of an enthusiastic coach. Chen Tian next to him said, you said that you have few friends. I think this will be a good opportunity. Hear this. Clark. Kent hesitated, and also felt that what Chen Tian said made sense. He thought back to the days when he was ostracized and alone by everyone, and suddenly felt that he should also make a new change. The two then briefly communicated with Coach John, who once again emphasized the assembly time and left in a hurry. Apparently there were other things to do. As for Chen Tian and Clark, Kent, on the other hand, continues to walk around the campus. I have to say that Metropolitan University, even if it is just the main campus, is big enough. The two of them just walked around like a horse and flowers, and it was almost noon when it was over. So, Chen Tian, they went to the school cafeteria for lunch again. 247. Then he walked out of the school gate, intending to turn back to the apartment building. The apartment building is located in a remote location, but the house prices there are the cheapest and closer to the metropolis. Chen, alas, when walking to a person is relatively sparsely populated, when there are few intersections. Clark, Kent remembered Lana's back when she was taken away by Whitney. Immediately, he looked at Chen Tian, a newly acquainted friend, and stopped talking. For this first friend after coming to the metropolis, Clark, Kent always felt that although they had been in contact for less than half a day in total, the teenager in front of him always gave himself a comfortable feeling everywhere. It was as if they had known each other for a long time. This makes Clark, Kent gave birth to a feeling of wanting to talk to Chen Tian about his troubles. Unfortunately, after this idea circled in his mind, the past scene immediately appeared in front of his eyes. That sound of freak still echoes clearly in my ears to this day. Clark, Kent sighed, but decided to give up. After all, he really wasn't sure if the teenager in front of him, after knowing his abilities, would also avoid him like everyone else. Clark, what's wrong? Chen Tian, who had been paying attention to the other party, naturally noticed the person next to him who looked like he wanted to talk and stop. It's okay. Clark, Kent smiled wryly, shook his head and said nothing. Then, on the road behind them, a truck drove by. You can see that the truck is not moving fast, because its cargo compartment is full of extremely heavy building materials. Boom.